Welcome back. This is the level that I created. I hope that you had fun building your own modular level. A few things I want to point out here. First of all, the ceiling objects, we would actually need also smaller ceilings because sometimes they actually ended up colliding with the walls. So we do have some parts where they're both at the same time, especially because we have that decoration under the ceiling. You can also use floor elements as ceilings if you want. And another thing I wanted to show you is how sometimes in Unity you get these light artifacts, light coming through cracks where there shouldn't be any light coming through. For example, if we go all the way here, you will see this light. And this is something that I've seen often in the past as well. And a lot of the times this just get fixed once you build the game. So the editor itself doesn't do an amazing job at calculating everything because you want to have a quick development environment. So sometimes you see artifacts in the editor that don't really appear in the game. Some other times they will also appear in the game depending on different settings. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do and what an easy fix for these sort of things is just to make sure to cover those cracks in a better way. For example, here I have this area here, that's where this issue is happening, and I can just bring in a column, for instance, and just simply grab it by the vertex here and position it there, and that's a quick way to cover these cracks. So in here in the hierarchy, I placed all of my elements in an environment game object so that I can keep this very organized and very clean. So I'm going to drag this new column object inside of that as well. But now you may wonder, okay, how are we now going to place our enemies and all our things? It is a little bit hard to deal with all these walls, and what if I want to add something inside the room? Do I have to zoom into the room and try to do it from there? So things can get a bit hard in that way. So what you can use, a very simple thing to use here is layers, so that we can add layers that can be switched on and off in our editor window. So I'm going to go here to layers, and I'm going to click edit layers, and I'm going to add a couple of layers here. So I'm going to add a walls layer and a ceiling layer so that we can easily switch those on and off, switch their visibility on or off. Let me select all of the prefabs that are walls, so the column and all types of walls, and I'm going to give this the layer named walls here in the inspector. And now I'm going to pick my ceiling and I'm going to give it the layer that is named ceiling. And now keep in mind that if you change the layer of any element manually, when you change it in the prefab, it will not be changed in the element itself. So let's now go here to layers, and we see our new layers. So I can, for example, switch all the walls off, and I can also switch the ceiling off. And there we got the wall. So as you can see, the ceiling is not covering all of them because what I mentioned, which is that I already changed the layer of some of these elements manually. So what I'm going to do in this case is just select the conflicting elements. The canvas of the camera is blocking our selection here. So I'm going to select those, and then I can just go here and make sure that they are part of ceilings. And I'm going to oh, that's it basically. Oh, it seems that those elements were not part of the prefab. They were elements that I had dragged on previously. So we're going to do it like that manually in this case. So now it's much easier to go and place enemies or place items, and if the walls are too much on your way, you can also disable them here, and then you have just a much cleaner view. And you can obviously accommodate this to however you want. Maybe you want to keep just the doors or just some of the elements. All right, so what I'll do is actually hide the ceiling and work with this in this manner. So now that we have a basic level, what I would like to do is, as a player, is be able to collect health, to collect items. So let's start by selecting our player and give it a tag here, a color here, so that we can easily find it, even when we're not selecting it. And now, how are we going to do these items? So I'm going to create here an empty game object, which will be called, let's call this health. And inside of here, we're going to add a new cube that will be a health item, like a health kit. So let's place our cube more like somewhere that is reachable by the player. So perhaps something like that. Actually, this health game object, I'm going to position it in 0 in the origin, so that then it's easier to position each one of the single items in a way that's just more intuitive. So let me just place this here and now raise it up like two Unity units, so that the player can easily find it. Now it is a bit too big for an item, so we can make that smaller. We can reduce it and make it like 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. So this will be a health kit, maybe 0.4. And we are going to be able to collect this health kit and get some health points. Let's give this a material. So I'm going to go to Assets and create a new folder here called Materials. Inside of that folder, I'm going to add a material for my health item. Let's call this health item material. And it will be let's pick any color that you want. I want to make mine green. And I'm going to give this the corresponding material. Now, when it comes to collecting something, a collectible, that is something that we've already implemented here in Zenva VR. So if I go to Script, I should be able to find Collectible Controller, which is a controller that you would give to an item you want to collect. So if I give this to this cube here, which I'm going to rename to health kit, I'm going to see now a few things here. First, we'll see that the VR interactive item script was added to it. And then we'll see our collectible controller, and we can specify properties here. We're only interested in having one property, so I'm going to click enter 1, and this will expand to this element, and I'm going to call this health, and I'm going to make it give the player 10 units of health. So I'm going to zoom out, and now I'm going to make this health kit a prefab for my game. So in my prefabs folder, I'm going to create another folder here called items, and I'm going to make my health kit a prefab. So that now we can easily add more health kits through our level. So I can now just like go and duplicate this and just move it somewhere else and duplicate it again and have a few of these elements here and there. All right, so now how does the collection process take place? We are going to look at the code of this script if you're not familiar with it. So we'll look at that. We need something for our player so that our player can do this collection act. And for that, we are going to give our player a script that is named player collectible controller. We have the collectibles themselves, these are the items, and then we have the script that is meant to be for the player. So let's go and give this player collectible controller to our player. So I'm going to drag this to my player object, which is the object that contains the camera and the free teleportation target. And I can see here that I have this option, maximum distance. So how far away should the player be to be able to collect one of these items? Let's say 2 Unity units. And if we go and check our teleportation controller, that makes sense. We can move 3 units away, and we can collect something that is a little bit far. You can obviously adjust this until it feels good when you're testing it in your virtual reality headset. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go and look at the code of this script, just so that we are familiar with how it all works. So I'm going to start by going to the collectible script. And we start at the beginning by requiring the VR interactive item component, which is part of the Unity VR standard assets library. Then this is how we define all of these properties. Each property has a health and an amount. We gave our we gave our property a name, a label of health, an amount of 10. And in here, we've got more things. We've got the list of properties, the array of properties, and we added just one. That was what we entered. So what we entered was a single entity of item stat, a single instance of item stat. Then what we have here is just getting the corresponding VR interactive item controller, getting our player collectible controller, which needs to be present, otherwise we get an error in the console. When we enable this script, we subscribe to all the events so that we can grab our item. And when the item is clicked, we let our player controller collect it and do whatever it wants to do with that. And we also destroy the item. We're always destroying the item here, which is something that we will have to fix, because sometimes you may not want to destroy the item, or the item might be something you want to carry, like a weapon. You don't want to destroy it. So this will be something based off a parameter that we will add. And then we have this selection. When we are looking or pointing our reticle at this item, we get to highlight it. And for that, if you are using the outline shader, this will make it outlined. But if not, nothing will happen. And you could change this by something else. You could make your item grow in size or rotate when you look at it. You can do anything you want. And then what we have here is just how we can get the property of an item. Now our player collectible controller is it defines this maximum distance, and when you collect something, we're basically calling an event, and then from elsewhere in our code we can hook onto this event or increase or improve the stats of the player. And then the rest has to do with keeping track of selection so that this doesn't break our free teleportation module. Alright, so with everything in mind here, we said that not all items should be consumed or destroyed when they are collected. Some of them should remain. Even if they don't remain in the same position, they still exist in the game. So what I will do here is make this something that is activated according to the value of a variable. So I'm going to have here another public variable. Let's add that at the very top and make some whether the item is consumable or not. So is the item consumable? And this means it will be destroyed after collecting. And we're going to make this is consumable. We're going to make this true by default. And if this is true, it is only then that we destroy the item. So in here we add this check and we destroy the item if it's consumable. We can also put this in the same line. Just a space is fine. All right. So that is the first change that I want to make. And now I also want my player to collect more health, to have health. And for that, I'm going to create a new script which will go in assets, and this will go as scripts. Folder named scripts. And in here, this will be our player. Let's call this player RPG controller. And this player controller will have a value of health, which will be public int health, or let's make it a float in case we somehow end up with decimal points. And it will let's set this at 100, and then we are going to lose from there. So whenever we collect something, we increase that health. Therefore, we need to get a hold of player collectible controller so that we can know when we've collected something. So I'm going to call this collectible controller, like so. And this, well, it could be confusing, so let's call this a player collectible controller. When we initiate our script, so I'm gonna get rid of that and add a wake here. When we start our script, we're gonna get a hold of this controller. So this will be a get component, because this is going to be given to the player object as well. So we are going to use get component and get it in this manner. So this is our player collectible controller, and in Unity this new script will be added to our player here. So our player has the collectible controller and also the RPG controller with the health and more things like that we'll add, like the weapons and whatnot. So we've got this, and now we want to listen to an event. We want to listen to this collect event on collect. We want to be able to listen to that and increase our health every time we collect a health item. So in here, this will be on enable. Every time that when the player is enabled is when we listen to the events, and also when we disable the player, we remove the event listeners. That is just a good practice in general. So I'm going to listen here to this is on collect. Whenever that is triggered, I'm going to call a method here, and let's call this handle collection. And it doesn't exist, so we press Control dot in this case, or Command dot in Visual in a Mac, I think, and get that generated for us. Now I'm going to just place this one up here. And when we disable the script, the component, we just get rid of that event listener. All right, so this already has this gives us access to our item, and now I can get the health of the item and increase the health of my player. So I'm going to go here and call this item health, and this will be item dot get component. We need the collectible component, collectible controller, because otherwise what we get is just a game object, but we are interested in these properties here that this one will provide. And then once we have that, we can use get property, and this will return the amount, or 0 if it's not present. So this will be get property, and the property is named health. So we need to type that as we typed it in the editor. And now that we have the amount of health, or health kit health, and now increase the player health. So that is health plus equal item health. And that should do it. So now if I go to Visual Studio, I go and press play. Let's make this a bit bigger. I'm gonna go press play. We know that we have 100 health, and I'm gonna look around and find these health kits. I put them a bit far away. Let's see if I can go and if I can collect them. I can see that my health now is increasing. Now, if I want my health items to have that border, like an outline border, what I have to do is make their material use uses a particular shader that highlights the borders, and that shader was obtained online, and I'm going to add it here to Zenva VR so that we have it here just for future projects as well. So I'm going to create that folder there, and the shader itself is this outline shader. So I'm going to bring that in. It is from the Unity wiki, and now in my materials, I'm going to grab my material item again, and in shader, I'm going to find that shader, and that shader was called outlined silhouette bump diffuse. And I can play with the parameters here if I want to. I'll just leave it as it is. Going to or actually the color of the highlighting, I think I like this kind of bright color there. All right, so let me get close to these elements here. After playing around here, I realized that this worked better with a maximum distance of 3, and then you can see how it selects the item. So now you can move around the level and you can collect health items and increase your health. So that is a good first step for an RPG game. On the next lesson, we'll start looking at the weapons and how you can grab a weapon and carry it around and also do melee attacks. So we'll be adding all of these different elements like enemies and a few more things. So I'll see you on the next video.